good day. And I pray that everyone is doing well wherever you are on your way. Guys, I wanted to do this live today to add value to you and answer the question which some of you may have been asking yourself, which is why do you pay for your own property? Guys, if you are joining me from the UK, from the US of A, from Australasia, or from Asia, wherever you are in the world, let me know in the chat where you are jumping in from. Let me know in the chat where you are joining me from. I hope and pray that I'm meeting you well today as we jump into today's live session to add value to you guys and give you everything you need in order for you to succeed. So in today's session, the question I'm going to be answering is why you pay for your property. If you're joining us on the Instagram live, congratulations and welcome on Instagram. If you're joining us from YouTube, congratulations and welcome to the YouTube audience. Feel free to let us know in the chat where you are tuning in from in the world. And if you're joining us from Facebook, congratulations and welcome to the live as well. So today's question is why you pay for your own property. The answers we're going to be giving you today are going to be answering exactly that. And the reason I decided to jump on this live and share this is because this is one of the most profound answers that I've given people, and people have said that they've got value from, specifically inside of the Cashflow Kickstart book, which is one of the resources that I created in order to help you guys move further faster in your cash flow creation journey. So we're going to jump straight into the question. I'm going to start by asking you a couple of questions so you can first and foremost make sure that you're in the right place and in the right space. And that first question is, have you ever purchased a property, got to the end of that purchase and thought to yourself, that was a financial burden? If that's you, just write I have inside of the comments so I know that I'm with the right people. If you've ever been in that situation where you've said to yourself, you know what, I've put all this energy in, I've put all this time in, I've put all this resource and finance in, and after all of that, I'm in the same predicament financially, or I'm in some people's situation, a worse predicament financially because of all of the energy, all of the time, all of the stress that went into the acquisition and the purchase of that property. If that's you, just throw in the comments the words, that's me. Now, this happens a lot of the time and it happens to a lot of people. It's not a phenomenon that just happens to one person in this world. And the reason why is because it takes resources in order to jump into property investment. Okay, it takes resources in order to jump into property investment, and for different people that's different kinds of resources. For some people that's a lot of their time, for some people that's a lot of their money, for some people it's a lot of their talent, it's their skill set, their tool set and mindset they'd have to kind of garner up in order to invest into their transactions. And this is some of the stuff we're going to be talking about in today's session. Now, side by side with that, here's another question for you guys, just to see again if this is the right place for you in terms of today's session. Okay, and that question is, when you've gone through that kind of predicament we just outlined in terms of property, when you've gone through that strenuous, stressful situation of giving yourself up, maybe having to spend months saving in order for you to actually invest in property, have you ever thought to yourself, is there a way I could have done that without having to deploy as much resource as I had to? If that's you, just write that's me in the comments so I know that we're with the right people. Because what I'm going to do first and foremost in today's session is I want to congratulate you, because if you fall into any of the two camps of people I've just spoken to, you are in the right place in this session today. You're in a place where we're going to be outlining for you exactly the 3-step formula in order for you to not end up in that predicament or position ever again. We're going to be sharing with you the 3-step formula, which is literally going to supercharge you out of such a predicament so that in the future, you can be the kind of person who's making revenue, who's making resources, and who's making strides into your future in a faster methodology and a faster way than anyone else who's going to be around your way. Now, how can I be so confident and bold to say that? Well, for those of you who've never met me, my name is Samuel. I Can Win, It Can Win. I help people literally create resources and revenues which are hidden in plain sight in order for them to create consistent and then ultimately colossal cash flow. Now, the way we do this is, as I mentioned earlier, using resources and revenues that are hidden in plain sight. And one of those resources are the resource of assets. Okay, and assets come in many different shapes and sizes. And one of the main asset classes that I focused on since 2005, wow, that's 2 decades now, is the asset class of property. Okay, for those of you who are my American friends, for the asset class of real estate. Okay, so a great question we should be asking ourselves is, Samuel, why are you interested in real estate? Like, why has real estate been something of interest to you for so long, for so many years? And the reason why, the simple answer to this is, well, I've got a whole formula that I teach on this, but we just don't have time to jump into that. But basically, the simple answer is because success leaves clues. Okay, I learned this from Jim Rohn a number of years ago, the late great business philosopher Jim Rohn, who used to say success leaves clues. And when you understand that success leaves clues, what do you understand? You understand that real estate has a track record historically of being one of the most wealthiest asset classes in history. Okay, and one thing we do not learn from history, as Peter J. Daniels used to say, is that we do not learn from history. So I decided a number of years ago, 2005, that I wasn't going to be one of those people who's going to be ignorant of history, but I'm going to be one of those people who's going to be aware of history. And as a result, I decided to start to learn from history. And I saw historically this pattern and this trend again and again, that people would either create or retain their wealth within the asset class of real estate and property. Now, if you go to any quote unquote first world nation, okay, and I don't like using terms like that, but if you go to what most people call a first world nation, you will see that in all of these first world nations, they produce or publish some form of rich list. Okay, in the UK here where I'm based, we have the Times rich list. Okay, in the US of A, they have the Forbes 400 or the Forbes 100 rich list. Okay, so you have these Forbes, these Times, you have all of these rich lists in all of these nations, and what you will find is overwhelmingly over 60% of the people on these rich lists, again and again and again, either create or retain their wealth in real estate and property. So what is that? Well, ding, 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 ding. That's a clue, okay? That is a clue, not just for me, but it's also a clue for you, okay? So round of applause for those of you who've able to recognize the clue. Now, guys, here's the question, right? If you recognize a clue like that, if you see a clue like that, if you see that, perpetually there is a specific niche or a specific asset class that's opening doors for people to either create wealth in the form of millions, in the form of trillions, because the real estate and property industry is a $1 trillion pound industry, right? So if you recognize that and you recognize that that's a clue, then wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? If that's you, just right, I would, right, in the chat. Wouldn't you want to take advantage of that? Wouldn't you want to be someone who says, you know what, I can see this trend, I can see that this track record, I can see that every single time this is an industry that over 50% of the world's wealthiest people are using to either create that kind of wealth or to retain that kind of wealth? Like, would you want to get a piece of that part of the puzzle? Okay, and if you would, again, feel free to just throw in the comments the words I would. Now, I decided in 2005, after being released from prison for the second time, okay, I was 18 years old at the time, that I was going to get a piece of that puzzle, right? And the question for me was, well, how do I do that? Okay, because I'd just been released from prison for the second time. I just decided I was going to go back to college and school and university, and in my mind it was like, well, I need to change my life. I need to kind of like fully become a new person. How do I do that? All right. And going to school, going back to college was part of how I was planning to do that. But there was a bigger picture. Like, there was a lot more to it. So one of the things I decided to do in order to make it make sense, in order to make it work, in order to work what was going to work for me, is I said to myself, well, why don't I start from the bottom up? Why don't I start from the absolute bottom and work my way all the way up? So for me, what that looked like, and again, this might be completely different for you because where you're starting from, but for me, what that looked like is that looked like basically becoming an estate agent. It looked like jumping in to the deep end and literally becoming an estate agent. Apologies, guys. I literally just got a message from one of my coaching clients who said, just to let you know, my offer got accepted today. We agreed on, and she threw in the price. Let's go. Excuse me, guys. I get super excited when my clients have big wins. So yeah, apologies for the interruption to that live. But yes, another exciting win for today. So I said, I'm going to start all the way from the bottom. So I decided to become an estate agent. I worked as an estate agent. That was my first full-time job. And At the time, I was 18. I was 19 years old, I believe, when I got that first full time job. And I worked as an estate agent. And working as an estate agent, I started to see a whole bunch of stuff, things that I think are going to be extremely valuable for you as we start to break down these three keys for you. But the reason why my starting from the bottom was so valuable was because it allowed me to see the gaping holes that many investors who now have built massive portfolios literally have. And I wouldn't have been able to see that if I just started at the top. I wouldn't have been able to see that if I started with a silver spoon. I wouldn't have been able to see that if I started with a trust fund, okay? So the way I started was completely different to most people. I started right from the bottom. I worked as an estate agent. I worked in lettings and then also in sales. And I connected with a specific landlord, okay? This guy, his name was Mr. Mahmood. He owned 4 properties and he took a liking to me. And the story is very, very interesting. But for those of you who would like the story, you can just write the word story in the chat. And then maybe I'll share an aspect of the story to get into these principles. But the essence of the story was this. Mr. Mahmood had 2 sons. One of them was a med school student. The older one was a bit of what we'd call a party animal for the sake of ease. And both of his sons were slightly older than me. They were both a bit older than me. I think one was 24 at the time and one was like 22. So the one in med school was 22 and he had no interest in property. He was like, I don't want to do nothing to do with property. I don't even want to inherit your property's dad, right? He just wants to do medicine. And the older son, who was the quote unquote party animal, as we'd call him, he wasn't reliable. He wasn't trustworthy. So because of that, Mr. Mahmood looked at him and thought, well, you know what? I don't feel comfortable leaving my properties to him. So I think because of the dynamic of Mr. Mahmood's 2 boys was the reason why he took a liking to me, this young 19-year-old who lived in a similar area, who didn't have any property or any property knowledge, but was working in the estate agency which let and managed Mr. Mahmood's property. So Mr. Mahmood took a liking to me, and as a result, I just was open to conversations with him. And this is going to actually touch on our first key for this whole training. So I hope you guys are ready for that. So the question is, why do you pay for your own properties? And most people have no idea what the answer is to that. So I'm going to start by giving you the first answer, the main answer, the primary answer, the key answer to why not just you, but most people actually pay for their property. Now, the simple way of saying this, right, just to make it super simple for you, is because most people don't know any the wiser. Okay, most people aren't aware that there's something else that can be done. Okay, most people don't know that they don't have to pay for their properties. All right, so this is why the first key in this process of why you pay for your properties is essential for you. Okay, and the first key is you need to have the pen. That will help. Let's go. All right. The first key is identification. Okay. It's identification. You need to identify. I used to be able to spell. Let's go. You need to identify your inabilities. Okay. Now, this is a crucial, if not the most crucial step in the process of developing your property investment journey. Now, the reason this is so crucial is because it's often overlooked. The reason it's so crucial is because when overlooked, there's nothing you can do to go back and sort this out except for sorting it out. Okay? So if you are someone who hasn't become accustomed to identifying your inabilities, guess what's going to happen? Those inabilities are going to consistently come back to stump you on your foot. Okay, let's be nice and use your foot, right? So if you understand what I mean by identify inabilities, just write in the comments, I do. Now, let me start breaking this down very simply. I first discovered this from the Bible, okay? So I'm going to be totally transparent with you. I'm going to take this out of property and then bring it back so that you guys can see it super clear. In the Bible, there's a book called Corinthians. There's two letters called Corinthians, 2 books called Corinthians. There's the First Corinthians and the Second Corinthians. And contained within these books is a powerful, insightful secret. And the secret is this. It's a simple verse. It says, he who thinks he knows not what he ought to know. Now, after studying that verse for a number of years, studying the context, studying how complex it is as well, I started to realize what it was actually saying. Okay, and I'll say this, what it was saying to me. Let me put it that way. When the Bible says he who thinks he knows not what he ought to know, what the Bible is actually telling you is that oftentimes when we are aware of something, we are unaware of something else, which is more important. And that last part is the crucial part. Oftentimes, when we are aware of something, we are often unaware of something else, which is more important, which is more crucial, which is more essential, which is the key. Okay? So I want you to think about that. I want you to think about your own life. Think about examples maybe in your life where you've been super aware of something. Okay? I'll give you an example. In 2008, 2009, I was studying my first master's. It was a master's in statistics at UCL, University College London, one of the most prestigious universities in the world, ranked number 7 at the time I was there, and all of that jazz, blah, blah, blah. Now, as I was studying this master's in statistics, something very interesting happened. I did my exams for the first year because it was a 1 year, it was supposed to be a 1 year master's, and the supposed to be tells you that there's a bit more to this story. But it was supposed to be a 1 year master's. I did my exams. 2008, 2009 academic year. And during that academic year, I got what you'd call hit it out of the park results on all of my coursework. Okay. I remember this. This is so powerful, right? I remember, and this is why I'm not the biggest advocate, even though I've studied 4 degrees, of people going to university, especially prestigious universities. But watch this. And I don't know if all prestigious universities are like this, but UCL, well, the statistics department at UCL definitely were like this. So I did one particular coursework, okay? Side note, chasing a rabbit, but hopefully you'll see the point. I did one particular coursework on one of my particular modules, submitted the coursework. I don't want to say which module, don't want to say which course because I don't want to expose like the department that deep, right? But it didn't happen in every department, it happened in one department. I got my coursework back and I got a grade B. It was a teamwork coursework. I did it with another gentleman. His name was Amin, great guy, and was a pleasure to meet him at the university. So me and Amin did this coursework together. We submitted the coursework and we got a B, a grade B. And it interested me because I read the feedback that the lecturer gave and I was like, I can't see how we could have improved this. Now, I wasn't saying this out of pride. I was saying this genuinely out of inquisitiveness. Like I just didn't know how I could have improved my work. So I actually went and booked an appointment with the lecturer, spoke to the lecturer and I said, hey, lecturer, doctor, so-and-so, I said, you've given us the feedback for this work and I'd love to know how to increase and improve this work because you gave us a B, right? Now, if you gave us an A minus, I get it. If you gave us an A, I get it, right? But you gave us a B. So could you tell me how we could improve this work? And the lecturer said to me, he said, there wasn't anything I thought you could have done to improve it. I just don't give A's. And I was like, wow, this is crazy, right? Now, that is an example. I wasn't even thinking about that example. I was thinking about another example that would have set us up for. But that in and of itself is an example of the thing I'm talking to you guys about. And if you guys have ever had an experience like that with a person, just put I have in the comments so I know I'm not alone, right? But that was the craziest thing. It's like, I knew what I thought I needed to know. That was the work. That was the conceptual idea. That was what I needed to deliver to the lecturer, right? But I didn't know something that was more essential to the information that I was able to provide in the coursework. I didn't know that regardless of what we would have done, the lecturer would never have given us an A. Okay? And this is what the Bible talks about in Corinthians when it says, he who thinks he knows not what he ought to know. It's easy to know all of the answers to the question and not know that the person who's going to mark your answers to the question doesn't actually mark it the way you think they mark it. That's more essential. That's a more crucial and critical piece of information to understand. And the same thing happens in many people's cash flow creation journey. The same thing happens in many people's property journey. In many people's property journey, what they're doing is they're trying to accumulate and assimilate all of the answers, but not realizing that even with those answers, they're still at a disadvantage by virtue of the fact that that's not how the answers are being measured. By virtue of the fact that things are actually measured a slightly different way than the way you're thinking about them being measured. So based on this, the first key is to identify your inabilities. Identify the things that you don't know that are going to stop you from being able to grow. Okay. Now, Samuel, what do you mean? How do I identify my inabilities? That is a great question. One of the ways you can identify your inabilities is by doing what I do with some of my coaching clients is basically a audit. Okay, a audit. I call it a substance audit, but you just do an audit. Okay, so what is an audit and what is a substance audit? Well, over my 2 decades of working in the field of property investment, I've discovered that there are 3 core foundations to investing. Someone throw the number 3 inside of the chat. So there's 3 core foundations to invest in. What are those 3 core foundations? Without these 3 things, no property deal ever happens. Okay, the first thing is time. Someone has to invest time in order for a property deal to happen. Now, what do you mean someone has to invest time? Well, if you don't invest time finding a deal, there is no deal to be a deal. If you don't invest time researching the deal, structuring the deal, negotiating the deal, there is no deal. So time is one of the key aspects of what has to be placed inside of the property pot in order for you to profit. So time, that's one of the key foundations. Second foundation is talent. Okay, there has to be some level of talent, especially if we're talking about a good deal or a great deal. Now, if we're talking about bad deals, ugly deals, deals that don't make a difference, deals that you don't want in your life anyway, then that doesn't matter. But if we're talking about a deal that's going to be of value to you, or value to your generations, or value to your children, or value to your children's children, an asset in your cash flow creation journey, then we are talking about something that has to have a form, an element of talent involved. Now, what do you mean by talent? Well, when I say talent, I'm talking about some rationale, some expertise, some skill set, some tool set, some mindset that allows you to look at a property deal and figure out where it's going to become financially fruitful for real. So I'll give you a very quick example. A number of years ago, one of the first ever resources I created to help people on their property journey is called the Sourcing Blueprint. Someone put SB in the chat. Now, when I created the Sourcing Blueprint, I created it because I kept seeing a pattern, and my background educationally is mathematics and statistics. So some of you might assume that I'm good at recognizing and reiterating patterns. I think I am anyway. So pattern recognition is one of my strong points. And what I started to do is I started to see a pattern in every single property deal I was involved in every single property deal people would talk to me about, in every single property deal I would research. I would see this pattern, and this pattern had 4 core steps. Okay, someone throw the number 4 in the chat and I'll break them down. Now, what's interesting is when you understand what these 4 core steps are, everything changes for you in your property journey, because you stop trying to do things that are thing number 5 or thing number 8 or thing number 0 or thing number 273, and you just focus on 1, 2, 3, and 4, because 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the core to making it all work. So for those of you who want to know, here's the 4, right? The first one is you have to market. I simply define marketing as just telling everybody what you do. You've got to market. If you do not market, there's no relationships to manage. If you do not market, there's no deals to measure. If you do not market, there's no money to be matured. So it starts by marketing, right? So market, someone throw the word market in the chat. Now, after you begin to market, what happens is if you're telling every person what you do as it pertains to property, as it pertains to investment, as it pertains to business, because I've soon, years after delivering and creating the Sourcing Blueprint, I very soon quickly realized that the Sourcing Blueprint doesn't just apply to property and real estate, which is why in my high-end coaching program, the Roundtable, we literally have people investing tens of thousands of pounds to learn how to use this same 4-point structure to catapult their businesses, right? And that's external, that's more broader than just property. But the reason this happens is because I started to discover another pattern. I started to discover that the Sourcing Blueprint, the 4M formula, as I'm known to call it, doesn't just work for property, it works for anything in business. So let's go deeper. So we start with market, right? You have to market, tell everyone what you do. But when you start to market, what happens is people raise their hand. They say, hey, you're talking to me. Hey, I can see. Hey, maybe you and me, all right? So when you market, people raise their hand and identify, they resonate with your marketing, and then you now have relationships you should start managing. Now, some of you might be thinking, Samuel, you should. Why should? Why is it not I have to start managing? Because most people don't do what they should do. Okay, I learned that from Jim Rohn a number of years ago. Okay, there are things you could do and you should do and you would do, but maybe you're suffering from a PhD in excusology, which was something I did a video about yesterday. But let's keep going on anyway. So instead of making excuses, when you tell everybody what you do through means of your marketing, people reach out to you. When people reach out to you, you start managing those relationships. By virtue of you managing those relationships effectively, what happens is the information necessary comes out. So as you are speaking to people who've shared with you, hey, I've got a property problem, or speaking to people who shared with you, hey, they've got an investment problem, or speaking to people who share with you, hey, they've got a money problem, whatever the issues are, through you managing that relationship, it starts to transpire the information necessary for you to measure the opportunity. Okay. So for example, let's say you started, let's keep it super basic. Let's say you started a leaflet campaign. So you started distributing leaflets in a local area, talking about how you help people who are going through a divorce to fix their financial situations. And one of the ways you do that is by helping them sell their assets, helping them sell their properties with speed. So let's say people respond to that marketing. If they responded to that marketing, they're raising their hands up. Now you've got relationships to manage. So let's say you start managing those relationships. Hi Tracy, how you doing? I'm Samuel, happy to help you. What's your situation? What's your problem? Okay. So as Tracy relays and outlays her problem, we now have a situation that we can measure. We can now say, okay, she's got a house that's roughly around this price or roughly around this value, or she believes it should be this price, and she's got this challenge and she's trying to raise this amount of money, and so forth and so forth. If you guys are getting this, just write in the comments, I'm getting it. So this is exactly how it works. You start going from marketing to relationship managing into opportunity measuring. Now, when you start measuring the opportunity, that gives you the opportunity to now outline, through means of a heads of terms or however you're going to do that, to outline the structure of the ongoing deal, to outline the structure of the ongoing opportunity, so that you can start maturing and making some money. Okay. And that's the last part of the 4M formula. It's maturing. You mature the deal. You go from a place where you've been talking about it, where you've been measuring it, to a place where you're solidifying it and you're concretizing it. Okay. So that's the 4M formula. Now, when I started to discover the 4M formula, I started to share it with people. I started to say to people, listen, all you've got to do is start marketing. When you start marketing, action begets action, my favorite quote. So when you start marketing, what happens is people start reaching out to you. When they start reaching out to you, you have to start, or you should, I'd advise you to start managing those relationships. Now, a lot of people I've seen do marketing, but no managing. I've even come across people, weirdly enough, who do marketing and managing, but no measuring. Okay. And the worst group of people, obviously, I'm sure you know, are people who market, manage, measure, and just for some reason don't mature. That doesn't make any sense to me. Like, why would you do the marketing? Why would you do the relationship managing? Why would you even do the measuring, but never mature? Now, I'll tell you one of the reasons why people market, manage, measure, but never mature. One of the reasons is because they haven't identified their inabilities. They haven't got to that place. They haven't got to that space where they've realized, hold on a minute, there's some inabilities I have. I don't know how to close a deal, for example. That would be an inability that you should identify, hopefully, as quick as possible. Like, that's an inability. If you're finding yourself to be someone who's marketing, who's managing, who's measuring, but never ever maturing, you should identify that inability as quick as possible and eradicate it as quick as possible. Now, if this has been of value for you guys so far, just write the word value in the chat so I know that you're getting value from this. Now, let's go a step deeper. First key to assist you, first key that assisted me is to identify inabilities. I shared with you guys from the book of Corinthians. It says it very clearly. He who thinks he knows not what he ought to know. It is essential. It is crucial. It is key for someone like you or for someone like me to identify our inabilities. But we don't stop there. After you identify your inabilities, you want to be able to go deeper than that. And in order to go deeper than that, you want to be able to tap into the next key. Okay. And the next key is super helpful. Okay. Because the next key is where we are able to start to, I would say, get some traction. So we're not just in a place where we're doing theoretical things, but we're now moving into some practical things. And these are practical things that are going to help you to generate more revenue. Okay. And this is the key. Like, if you're generating cash flow, you want to generate cash flow so you can generate more revenue. Okay. All right. So let's jump into the second key. Okay. So the first key was identify your inabilities. The second key is you want to be able to imitate initiative. Okay. If I can write this properly, there we go. All right. Imitate initiative, which doesn't seem to be coming up right now, but we'll get this fixed. So guys, this is the second key. The second key is to imitate initiative. Don't be a person who's saying to themselves, oh, woe is me. Let me even use this as an example. I used a biblical example earlier. I'll use another one. I was reading 1 Kings chapter 18 and 19 today. In 1 Kings 18 and 19, it talks about Elijah, the prophet, okay? And it says something really interesting about Elijah, the prophet. It says, Elijah says to God, I'm the only one left. And God says to Elijah, you're not the only one left, okay? Now, why do I bring this up? Because sometimes in life, I've seen this happen time and time again. People think they're the only one. You and I at times have thought we're the only one. We go through situations, we go through circumstances, we go through challenges. Sometimes situations, circumstances, and challenges and scenarios that hurt. okay, that hurt. They literally hurt. They may be challenging situations, challenging scenarios, challenging settings. And as we go through some of these situations, scenarios, and settings, we think to ourselves, oh, I'm the only one. We have the woe is me mentality, thinking I'm the only one. Just like Elijah, 1 Kings chapter 19. Now, I'm not saying Elijah was not going through some drama. I'm not saying Elijah shouldn't have had trauma. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is he wasn't the only one, but he thought he was. Okay? And that's one of the things that stops us from recognizing how to imitate initiative. Samuel, what do you mean imitate initiative? And what do you can tell I spelled that all wrong. Thank God this is not a spelling test, guys. Imitate initiative. There we go. Having studied 2 masters, you should be able to spell, son. So let's go. So imitate initiative. Like, this is the second step. And the reason why this is crucial is because it takes humility to do this. The Bible has a powerful verse. It says, if you humble yourself, you'll be exalted. It says humility comes before honor. What does all of that mean? All of that means is you have to get to a place where you recognize someone else already has the answers that I'm looking for. Someone else already has the structures that I'm looking for. Someone else has already done some form, framework, or formula that I'm already looking for. So I don't have to be the first person to figure it out myself. In the book of Ecclesiastes, it says something profound. It says that there is nothing new under the sun. But the problem is we live in a world where people are trying to do something new under the sun when God's already said there's nothing new under the sun. And this is the reason why most people's life isn't fun. Because they're striving and stressing about things that you don't need to strive about, you don't need to stress about because someone else has done it already. I remember being young and not really being into sports that much. Like, I had a lot of friends who were really into football. Like, football's the big thing here in the UK for those of you who don't know, right? So I had a lot of friends who were really interested in football and those kind of sports. I wasn't really interested in football that much. What I was interested in, however, was the coaches and the managers of the football teams. So someone who used to fascinate me was Alex Ferguson. He used to fascinate me. Why would he fascinate me? Because he spent 25 years winning. And I used to think to myself, how does one man get these other 11 men to succeed again and again and again and again? And I know some of you are going to say, oh no, it was Wayne Rooney, it wasn't Alex Ferguson. But Ferguson was winning before Rooney showed up. And I know some of you are going to say, oh no, it was David Beckham, it wasn't Alex Ferguson. And I'm just going to say to you, but Ferguson was winning before Beckham showed up. And I know some of you are going to say, oh no, Samuel, it was Eric Cantona, it wasn't Ferguson. And I'm going to say, well, Ferguson was winning before Cantona showed up. And I'm not saying this to diminish any of the skill sets of the Eric Cantonas, of the Paul Scholes. I'm just saying my favorite from the Man United eras that I used to watch, right? I'm not saying anything bad about Beckham. I'm not saying anything bad about Rooney or any other of these amazing players, the Dwight Yorks, the Andy Coles. Like, that's not what this is. What this is breaking down my psychology as a child in terms of my interest. Like, I was interested in the managers because I didn't understand how a manager like Redknapp, a manager like Ferguson, how these men, these individuals with their teams would allow their teams to reign supreme. That used to fascinate me. So here's something that's interesting. I don't have to figure that out myself. Why? Because Alex Ferguson has an autobiography. He actually has more than one biography, right? Alex Ferguson has run training courses. He's run sessions. He's run workshops. He's run programs. So what happens? What happens is if I can imitate initiative, what happens is let me show you how good this is, right? What happens is I have to start by identifying my inabilities. If I don't recognize my inabilities, guess what? I wouldn't be looking for a successful coach, a successful manager, a successful person who's done it already. The reason why most people are paying for their own property is because they haven't started to identify their own inabilities. They haven't started to say, listen, I have bought 8 properties. I've got a portfolio of £4.5 million. And my portfolio only brings me £3,000 per month. That's an inability. I have an inability of creating colossal or consistent cash flow from multiple millions that are out there in property. Like, that's an inability, guys. And if you don't recognize that inability, you won't be open to imitate initiative. Why? Because you're going to do the same old, and get the same old. So if you want things to change, you have to change. And this is exactly how you do that. You just humble yourself. You just recognize, well, hold on a minute. I'm now recognizing that some of the things I'm doing are not working. I need to change some of the things I'm doing. who's doing stuff that I desire to do or that I thought I was doing, but it is working. And then you start to do the formula, okay? And if you're thinking the formula, Sammy, what formula are you talking about? I'm talking about the formula I call the fastest path to success. And the fastest path to success formula is the FAST formula. What does it stand for? It stands for F, find someone who's already doing it the way you want to do it. A, ask them how they're doing it, and if they charge, to learn how to do it. S, seek to do it the way they do it. And T, take advantage of all opportunities they provide for you. That's the fastest path to success formula, which I've been teaching for a number of years. But you can't get to finding someone who's doing what you desire to do successfully if you haven't taken it upon yourself to identify your inabilities. And that takes being a little bit humble, guys. That takes taking a step back, guys, and saying, you know what, I don't know everything, even if I thought I did know everything. And because I don't know everything, I'm open to learning something. Okay? So here's what we do. If you want to stop being the person who's paying for all your own properties, you start by identifying your inabilities. When you recognize your inabilities, if you take the audit that I spoke about earlier, might be, okay, you have lots of time, but you don't currently have talent. Okay? By talent, I mean, you don't have the insights, right, on how to do this creatively. Okay? Or you have time, maybe you do have talent. Maybe you're currently a mortgage broker. Maybe you're currently an accountant. Maybe you're someone who's worked in property for some years, okay? So let's say you've got the time, you've got the talent, but you don't have treasure. You don't have enough savings saved up in order to make it work for you, okay? So the reason you do the audit to identify your inabilities is so that you can become super laser clear on what's missing. And then the moment you're super laser clear on what's missing, you make up what's missing through means of relation. Okay, and it's something I wrote earlier today. I don't have my journal with me, but one of the things I wrote earlier today, and again, I wrote this from reading 1 Kings 18 and 1 Kings 19, and that was that rain is a byproduct of relation, not a byproduct of rationale. Okay, now, again, I have to give you context so you understand what I'm talking about. In 1 Kings 18 and 19, there's a famine in the land. They need rain. Okay, because otherwise they're going to have no grain. Okay, nothing's growing because there's a famine. And the king in charge at the time is a king called Ahab. He's married to a woman called Jezebel. You may have heard of her. And there's a prophet Elijah. The man of God Elijah is in town. And Elijah's basically said, listen, because you guys are doing wickedness, because you're doing evil, it's not going to rain. And if it doesn't rain, you'll have no grain. Okay, so the livelihood, the economic lifeblood of that economy is stunned, shunned, and literally stopped. Why? Because of a simple factor that they don't have any rain. Okay, so what does rain symbolize in the story we're talking about? In the story we're talking about, rain symbolizes quote unquote cash flow. It symbolizes revenue. It symbolizes resources. It symbolizes the affluence that is necessary, that's required, that's of interest for the people. Okay, if you understand what I'm talking about, just throw in the comments the words I do, so I know you understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so rain symbolizes affluence. Rain is symbolizing revenue. Rain is symbolizing resources in terms of this example in 1 Kings 18. We go over to 1 Kings 19 and something super profound happens. The super profound thing that happens in 1 Kings 19 is when Elijah says there's going to be no rain, when Elijah tells them, listen, they're going to have pain, when Elijah tells them they're not going to have any grain, they start saying, we got to fix this, which is obviously what they should want to do. Elijah says, listen, I'm going to pray for you guys to sort yourself out. And when you sort yourself out, there's going to be rain again. And then Elijah has this whole kind of showdown with the prophets, right? The prophets of Baal, okay? Like the evil workers, basically, the people that are doing like the demonic stuff, okay? Now, here's what happens. Those evil workers end up not doing very well, not showing up or showing out, and they basically get taken out. Then Elijah's left. And Elijah says something so profound. He says, Ahab, talking to the king, he says, King Ahab, he says, go and eat, go and drink because it's about to rain. He says, I can hear the sound of an abundance of rain. So he basically says, look, I know you've had a period with no resources. I know you've had a period with no revenue. I know you've had a period with no quote unquote, in the terms of application, no cash flow. But I can hear that it's going to change now. Now, what I wrote down when I read that is rain, which is synonymous in this rain, which is synonymous in this example with cash flow, is a byproduct of relation, not of rationale. Because you see, King Ahab could have sat down with his legislators, with his pens, papers, and his laws and said, oh, we're going to use our brain, use our rationale to make more rain. It doesn't work like that. The rain was activated and deactivated by virtue of Elijah's relationship with God. So what does that tell us? That tells us relations create rain, not rationale. And the moment you start to realize my relations create rain, not my rationale, you stop thinking that what you currently know is your key to your cash flow. And you start realizing, oh, I've got to identify my inabilities. I'm not able to actually do this really well. So because I'm not able to do this well, guess what I should do? I should make up in relationship what I'm lacking in terms of rationale. So if I don't have the rationale of how to buy my next property using none of my own money, I can build a relationship with someone which is going to allow me to imitate initiative, which will allow me to make it rain. If someone's getting this, just write I am in the chat, so I know you guys are getting this. This is how it works. The reason why you've been paying for your own property is because you haven't imitated initiative. You haven't been able to get to a place where not only you say to yourself, you know what, I've got to identify my inabilities. I've got to see where I've gone wrong. I've got to take this audit. I've got to see if I've got the time, the talent, or the treasure. Oh, I've got the time, I've got the talent, but I don't have the treasure. Or, oh, I've got the treasure, I've got the talent, but I don't have the time. Or, oh, I've got the talent, but I'm missing the treasure and the time. When you recognize your inabilities, that puts you in the pole position to go and develop the relations for you to be able to imitate initiative. Okay, and it's not about taking initiative. You know, you've often heard me say, guys, action takers are money makers. Yes, you're going to have to take action, but it's not about the taking of initiative. It's about imitating initiative. Why do I say that? Because you can't take initiative if you don't know the right initiative to take. Otherwise, you're going to be like one of those people who climb up the ladder with all your energy and swagger and find out at the top of the ladder, you climbed up the wrong ladder. Okay, if your ladder is hooked up to the wrong building, there's no point putting the energy in to climb that ladder. Hopefully this is making sense to you guys. Now, let's go deeper, okay? Because after key number 1, identifying your inabilities, and key number 2, which is imitating initiative, we get to my favorite key, which is key number 3. Key number 3 is where you get to do exactly what I write about in my book. You get to inspire investors, okay? You get to inspire investors. You get to get people excited about what you do, okay? And this is one of my favorite parts of the process, inspiring investors. Let me tell you why it's one of my favorite parts. Because you don't have to do much to do this, especially if you've done the other 2 steps to get through this. If you've identified your inabilities, you have something to share with people. You can say to people, listen, I used to think this, but now I realize that. I used to be here, but now I've actually got to here. Okay, you get to do all of that just by identifying your inabilities. Now, if you progress past that and you start to imitate initiative, you now have case studies. You can now say, well, based on me doing this, I was able to get this result. Based on me seeing this, I was able to get to this place. Okay, so when you now have case studies, when you now have examples, guess what's going to happen? Investors are already watching you. Investors are already saying, hold on a minute, this guy came from having no properties to having a £7.8 million portfolio. This guy went from having no cash flow being generated through means of resources and revenues as it pertains to property investment to now generating £17,483 every single month. How did that happen? Yo, I'm going to tell you how it happened, because now I get to inspire investors. I now get to tell other people what I'm doing. Now, guys, let's jump into the book, because this might be helpful for some of you, right? So this right here is the Cash Flow Kickstart book, all right? And you can see the subtitle for those of you who are looking, Your Guide to Mastering Cash Flow and Achieving Financial Freedom, right? Now, I wrote this book to help people move further, faster in their property investment journey. And we've had multiple people buying this book and just giving me like super testimonials of the value they've got out of it. Now, the specific aspect of inspiring investors is spoken about in chapter 2, okay? Chapter 1 is where I basically go through multiple barriers. You can see that in the context page. Chapter 1, the 3 chains that keep investors trapped, okay? And then chapter 2, we talk about breaking chain number 1, which is unlocking hidden money, okay? And specifically, one of the things I'm talking about inside of this chapter is inspiring investors. And inspiring investors is super key, super crucial to you leveling up and moving to your next stage in terms of your property investment journey. Now, I'm going to do something which I haven't done before, but I think is going to be super valuable for you guys. If you are someone who's saying to yourself, you know what, Samuel, I've heard what you've shared in today's session. I've heard the 3 keys that you've literally revealed for me. I've heard that I need to identify my literal inabilities. And Samuel, you know what? I need to do that. I need to do that audit. And Samuel, I'm also hearing you that I need to imitate initiative. I need to be someone who can actually not just take initiative, but find the initiatives that are the appropriate initiatives to take and imitate those initiatives in order for me to be able to inspire investors. If that's you, then what I want to do is I want to invite you to take advantage and go and get yourself a copy of the Cashflow Kickstart book. But I'm going to do this in a way which is super different than I've ever done this before. I'm going to give you an opportunity to go and get the Cashflow Kickstart book for any price you desire. Okay. Now, I know it sounds crazy. I know you're literally thinking, what, Samuel, any price I desire? Yes. Okay. This is my gift to you today. Now, you might be asking, Samuel, why would you be giving me a gift? Like, what have I done to deserve the gift? Well, I'm going to tell you the real reason why. This is the month of October. And in my household, for those of you who don't know, I'm happily married and I have 6 children. And 3 out of the 8 of us in our household have our birthdays in this month, the month of October. Okay, so I'm going to break it all down. So my second born son, okay, who's my 3rd child, Zechariah, he turned 8 on the 4th of October, being tested right now. He turned 8 on the 4th of October. My oldest child, Abigail, who's the reason that I don't work a full-time job. She's the reason for every season as it pertains to business. She turned 12 a few days ago on the 8th of October. And my beautiful wife is having her birthday. I think they say sometimes it's rude to talk about women's age, so I won't say her age unless she wants me to. And if she's on the live, Mrs. Akan, you can let me know if we should say your age. But Mrs. Akan, her birthday is on the 16th of October. So right now, at the time of doing this session, recording this video, running this live, I'm right in the midst of multiple birthdays in our household. And what I thought would be beautiful and nice is to give you guys a gift to kind of commemorate this live. So I'm not just giving you the insights that I've shared with you today about identifying your inabilities, about imitating initiative, and also about literally inspiring investors, but I wanted to go further and actually give you guys something that can help you move further faster. So to do that, it's a completely different link. It's not the normal link for the book. All you'd have to do is go to the link. I'll throw it in the chat. Now, when you go to the link, you're going to see this page right here. You can see what it says, the Cashflow Kickstart book. It's typically £6 on the page that we usually offer the book. Here, what you can do is you can go here. It recommends £6 because that's the price it typically is. But what you can do is you can click here, change amount, okay? And you can pay whatever you want, right? It's totally up to you. If you want to go and get the book for £60, just put 60 in here, fill out your details and go get a copy of the book. If you want to go and get the book for £600, you can literally put 600 in there and go fill out the link or fill out the stuff on the page and get the book for that price. Or if you want to get the book for any other price, it is up to you guys, right? So I'm going to encourage you guys, go get yourself a copy of the Cashflow Kickstart book. This resource is going to show you how to master your cash flow to achieve financial freedom. This is going to be the missing key for some of you guys who've been saying to yourself, you know what, Samuel, I want to be financially free. You know what, Samuel, I've been looking for the answers. You know what, Samuel, I'm just not sure how to do this. Well, this book is going to clearly outline for you how to make it happen. Okay, it's going to clearly outline for you how to make it happen. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to throw the link inside of the chat for you guys in order for you to take advantage of that. And I'm going to encourage you guys, like, just move forward with the process. All right, take advantage of your advantages. This is something I've been saying to people for a number of years. Learn to take advantage of your advantages. Don't be someone who's always waiting, always hesitating, and never seeing your finances start to levitate or levitating. There we go. That way it rhymes. All right, so I'm going to throw the link inside of the chat for you guys, regardless of what platform you're in. If I'm taking too long to throw the link in, just throw the word link in the chat and then you will probably get the automated link thrown in. But I'm going to throw the link in the chat. guys, take advantage of it. Go and take the step, get yourself the book. My gift to you today, get it for any price you desire, just so that you can make sure that you have the formulas, the frameworks, the whole structures to move further faster in your future. Don't be someone who's waiting for something that's never going to show up. Instead, be someone who's taking action so you can make sure that you are getting, as I usually say, what you came for. With that being said, guys, I am gonna love you guys. I'm gonna leave you guys, and I'm gonna encourage you to make sure that you do what you've got to do to make sure your cash flow keeps coming through. And as I usually say, remember, it's small keys like these that open up big doors. Good day, God bless. Summit I Can Win, signing out, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care.